Hey my loves, nice to see you, in a manner of speaking. I'm back with another response to the tag Top Tarot Trumps that was started by Marsha of Musings by Marsha, and I know that I'm late again. This time I'm going to be looking at the Death card and showing some of my favourite examples. Actually, I've had a bit of a delay in filming this one. I've hit a little bit of an uninspired patch, which you wouldn't think would be the case, since this is basically my favourite Major Arcana card. But when I was preparing to do this video, I was just a bit lost for words. So this might end up being a short one. What I've decided to do in this video is to show all the cards in pairs, because as I was preparing, that's just the way that made the most sense, and I think you'll see why. I am cheating a little bit. I do have 6 this time and not 5, so sorry about that, but they are all tarot cards this time. So I want to start with these two Skelly boys. We've got the Renaissance Tarot and the Cosmic Tarot, and you can see why I've paired these two together. If you haven't already watched Marsha's video on the historical death cards, then I would definitely recommend watching it. But these two are the ones I think that remind me the most of some of those older historical death cards. This one from the Renaissance Tarot was one of the first ones that I chose to put in this video. And it's because I really like how this skeleton looks so kind of jaunty. And jaunty was actually the word that went through my mind. And then when I looked through the guidebook, that's actually the word that they've used to describe him. It says that he's a jaunty skeleton with a feathered cap, saluting the living, wielding a scythe with which he harvests souls. And I just really love that idea of this kind of like chill, jaunty skeleton. All the symbols in the background on this one have meaning as well. There's a little broken mirror that represents youth and beauty. There's a bag of coins that represents wealth. There's a bishop's mitre and a king's crown, which are 2 types of power on Earth. And actually up in the corners are Hades, who's the king of the underworld, and Kerberos, excuse my pronunciation, who's the 3-headed sort of hellhound. Looking at the guidebook for this one actually makes me love it more, because it lists divinatory meanings, and the first one is just death, with a full stop, which I really appreciate. Like, I think we should acknowledge that death, actual death, body dies, death, is a real thing. And doesn't mean that's what this card always indicates, but I'm of the opinion that sometimes it can do, and that that's okay. Of course, it also lists loss, death and rebirth, end of an old situation, and beginning of a new one as being other sort of meanings for this card. And all of those are probably more likely to arise in readings. So then we have this one from the Cosmic Tarot, who's a bit like the updated version of that one, if you like. It reminds me of almost like an album cover from like an 80s metal band or something like that. Look at his little smile and his bird friend. He's just such a cool guy. The guidebook for this one points out there's a rising sun behind him, which points towards those sort of new beginnings that come after an ending. And one of the interesting interpretations from the guidebook is actually a boundary has been reached, which I think is a great interpretation of this card and one we don't really hear very often. And then there's all this other symbolism with sort of these other items on the ground, the clock and the graves and the broken crown and sword and everything like that. So I think there's a lot of little things on this card to kind of take note of in a reading, which I always like for when I'm doing readings. I like for a card to have a lot of details that I can pick and choose from. The next pair is these two. Hello to anyone who has seen any of these videos of mine before. You knew they were coming. These are from the 8 Coins Tattoo Tarot and the Fyodor Pavlov Tarot. Both of these show a kind of embracing of death. So we still have this Reaper kind of skeletal figure, but also a human figure in each of these cards. So starting with the Tattoo Tarot, death or a Grim Reaper is a very common kind of image to be depicted in tattoos. So I'm really happy to see that it, fits in very well in this deck. The person in this card is crying, and that shows that there's a time for grief and that we can acknowledge sadness. But in this card, there's also a lot of symbolism of renewal and transformation. We have the sunrise in the background and the butterfly in the hair. So it's showing that we can be caught off guard by changes and endings, but we can also allow ourselves to mourn and that new things will always be ready to begin. Same sort of idea in this one. All the elements of life are scattered around the feet. So the book and the hourglass and the sword and the cup. And they all sort of have basically no value once death arrives. So all that's left is to embrace death. And I really like the art in this one as well. And finally, we have some birdies. So this is the Animal Totem Tarot and the Wild Unknown. It's the pocket edition, so excuse the size. What I like about these two is that they communicate the meaning of this card in a kind of earth-based way, and I think that's really relatable and easy to understand. So with the vulture, we can understand that something had to die for this bird to live, and vultures are important to the ecosystem where they live, which can help us to think about the kind of interconnectedness and cycles as themes. And then it's the same kind of idea with this scaly bird. When a bird dies in nature, other animals and insects are going to get nourishment from it. And so will fungi and eventually plants. And the image feels a little bit sad at first, and there's a place for that sadness, but the situation is ultimately neither good or bad, it's just the way that it is. So these are my favorite death tarot cards. Thank you again for watching. If you're new and you feel like it, please subscribe. Otherwise, I will see you in the next one. Bye.